My wife texted me, "Don't come. My mother doesn't want you here." I read it standing in the driveway of the brand new house I'd just put my name and future on the line for, still holding the red ribbon they were about to cut. For a moment, I honestly thought she'd sent it to the wrong person. I stood there in my scuffed work boots on perfect fresh concrete, watching shiny SUVs pull up under a flat gray Cedar Rapids sky. Her cousins, her church ladies, all climbing out with covered dishes and Hy-Vee trays. My phone buzzed again. "Tom, don't make today about you." That one I knew was meant for me. Behind me, the place looked like a picture off a bank calendar. 2 stories, fake stone, front 3-car garage, big windows looking out over what used to be a cornfield on the edge of town. The kind of house my mother-in-law, Evelyn, had been talking about for 20 years. Someday, she always said, circling photos in magazines. Someday finally came. It just didn't have room for me. 2 weeks earlier, I'd sat in a glass office at Collins Community Credit Union, signing my name until my hand cramped. 22 years in local 33 pipe fitters, and the years after that crawling through attics doing HVAC, that's what made the numbers work. I put my old Ford truck up as collateral. I emptied the last of my savings. It's for family, I told myself. Across the street, a couple of new neighbors leaned on their porch rails watching. Someone taped a banner across the garage door. "Welcome home, Mom." Not Mom and Tom, just Mom. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could hear Melissa's voice in my head, as clear as if she were standing beside me. "Tom, you know how Mom is. Please don't start." I'd heard that line, or some version of it, for most of our 15-year marriage. I typed one word back, "understood," then hit send. You'd think a man who lived through Desert Storm back in '91 would be harder to shake. I've had mortars land closer than my wife's texts, but "my mother doesn't want you here" did something different. It didn't just sting. It drew a clean line around where I belonged and where I didn't. A silver SUV eased up the street and turned into the driveway without slowing. I recognized the headlights. Melissa parked, never once looking toward where I stood off to the side. Evelyn climbed out in a new blue coat, hair freshly done, her whole face lit up. People clapped when she turned to wave. Her eyes brushed over me for half a second. No nod, no hello. Just a quick flat look like I was a utility pole. I could have walked up and said, "You're welcome," loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac to hear. Instead, I set the shiny ceremonial scissors they'd bought just for this moment on the little folding table by the front walk and stepped back. "Tom, you staying?" one of the older deacons from church called, arms full of plastic cups. I forced a small smile. "Nah," I said, "just dropping something off. This isn't my day." A Bluetooth speaker started playing some country song about blessings and big houses. Evelyn and Melissa lined up in the stone doorway I'd paid for, smiling for pictures, while everyone gathered around them like a magazine cover come to life. I walked back to my truck and climbed in. The driver's seat creaked the way my back does at the end of a long shift. I shut the door and watched them through the windshield for a moment, laughing, posing, adjusting their coats. My phone buzzed one more time before I turned the key. "Please don't be dramatic. We can talk later." "Love you." I stared at those last 2 words. "Love you." Sitting right under "don't come." It almost made me laugh. Then I put the truck in drive and rolled away from the mansion, past fresh sidewalks and coming soon signs, back toward the older side of Cedar Rapids, where the streets are cracked and the paint's peeling, and the houses look like somebody actually lived a life inside them. By the time I hit the main road, my chest didn't feel tight anymore. It just felt empty, like somebody had quietly carried the furniture out of my life and shut the door behind them. I told myself I was just going home. What I didn't know yet, as I turned left toward our little 3-bedroom on the north side, was that in less than an hour, that one quiet word I'd texted, "understood," was going to be the line between the life they were building on my back and the life I was finally about to take back. I drove home on autopilot, passing the same streets I'd taken for years: Ellis Boulevard, the old bait shop, the empty VFW lot where they hold fish fries in the summer. The farther I got from that mansion, the more the truth settled into me. Something had been breaking for a long time, and I'd been the last one to notice. When I pulled into our cracked driveway, the house looked the same as always: white siding, gutters sagging on one end, the porch light Melissa kept forgetting to turn off. I sat there for a minute, hands on the wheel, feeling the years spool backward. 15 years of marriage doesn't start with cold shoulders and cruel texts. It starts with warmth and hope. Ours started at a church Thanksgiving potluck. I was standing by the dessert table trying to decide between pumpkin pie or pecan, and Melissa walked up with a plate full of turkey and sweet potatoes. "You look like a pecan man," she said with a little smile. She wasn't wrong. I laughed. She laughed. And that was it. One of those moments you don't know is important until years later when you're looking back, trying to figure out where things changed. She liked that I worked with my hands. She liked that I'd served in Desert Storm 91. She'd introduced me to people by saying, "Tom can fix anything, even my old Chevy." Her son Robbie was 12 when we met. Awkward, quiet. I taught him how to change brake pads and throw a two-seam fastball. He called me T for a long time before he ever used the word dad. When he finally did, I cried in the garage where no one could see. Those were Goodyear's road trips to Dubuque Friday, fish fries at the VFW, watching storms roll in from lawn chairs under a metal awning I'd welded together myself after spending more than 2 decades with local 33 pipe fitters. I remember thinking back then that I'd finally built something that wouldn't fall apart. But slow cracks started showing, tiny things. Her mother, Evelyn, would make comments like, "Robbie needs stability, Melissa. Tom's job isn't upscale." She always said upscale like she was biting into something sour. Or she'd ask, "Does Tom have health insurance through the union?" And Melissa would rush to answer for me as if I wasn't standing there. Little exclusions, little jokes, little decisions made without me. And then bigger ones. Melissa started visiting her mother 3 or 4 nights a week. At first she'd say Evelyn was lonely. Then she said they were planning things together. Then she stopped explaining at all. The first major red flag landed 2 years back. I walked into the kitchen after a long shift, boots still muddy, and found Melissa and Evelyn sitting at the table with a stack of paperwork. When I asked what was going on, Melissa said, "Oh, this just helping Mom understand some things." Turns out she'd used my income to help Evelyn get a pre-approval for her dream house. "You never look at the fine print anyway," she'd said like it was a joke. I should have pushed back harder. But when you're married, you tell yourself you're being a good partner by not turning every disagreement into a war. You make peace. You choose your battles. And sometimes, without meaning to, you stop choosing yourself altogether. Then came the distance. Melissa staying out later. Her phone always face down. Arguments that never quite exploded, but always left smoke in the room. "I feel like you don't see me anymore," I told her once. She sighed and said, "Tom, everything doesn't have to be so dramatic." That word again, dramatic, as if asking for a seat at the table of my own life made me unreasonable. But still I kept trying. Fixed the gutters, helped Robbie move to his first apartment, took extra shifts when Melissa said her mom needed money just for now. I didn't know I was building a bridge they were planning to burn behind me. That night, after leaving the mansion celebration I wasn't welcome at, I walked into our quiet kitchen, opened the fridge, and stared at a half-empty bottle of iced tea for a long time. Sometimes the silence of a house tells you things before the people do. I sat at the table, elbows on the wood I'd sanded myself 12 years earlier, and thought about those early days. The pies, the laughs, the road trips, the vows. Then I thought about her text, "Don't come. My mother doesn't want you here." Somewhere between those 2 points, something had gone terribly wrong, and I was finally done pretending it hadn't. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click every time the wobble hit. Around 5:30 a.m., I gave up, got dressed, and drove to VFW Post 788 on 16th Avenue, the place I always went when life didn't make sense. The front door creaked the same way it had since the 80s. Smelled like burnt coffee, old floor wax, and American Legion pancakes from some breakfast months ago that never quite left the building. A couple of the guys were already there. Kenny with his crossword, old Dale with his oxygen tank, and behind the counter the same coffee pot that looked older than half the members. And there at our usual table sat Rick Carlson. Rick and I met in Desert Storm. He was 21 and angry at the world. I was 19 and scared out of my mind. We came home different men, but we came home brothers. He'd give me grief until the day one of us died. He took one look at me and said, "Jesus, Tom, you look like someone stole your lunch money." "They did," I said, sitting down, "just in a $780,000 house." Rick set down his mug. "All right, tell me." So I did. The text, the party, the way Evelyn looked through me like I was part of the landscaping. Rick whistled low. "Man, we survived sandstorms together, and you're telling me you let those two run you off their property." "It's not my property," I said. Not according to the paperwork. What do you mean? I didn't know yet, not officially, but I had a hunch and it sat heavy on my chest. After coffee, I drove straight to Collins Community Credit Union. It was a little after 8, the lobby still quiet. A young teller named Megan recognized me. Her dad worked union jobs with me years ago. Morning, Tom, you okay? You look stressed. Yeah, I said. I need to see the file for that mortgage I signed for my mother-in-law, just to confirm something. She pulled it up on her screen, then frowned. That's strange. It's not showing you as an owner, just the financial guarantor. What I leaned closer. That can't be right. But she turned the screen and there it was. Plain as day. Borrower Evelyn Parker. Occupant Evelyn Parker and Melissa Parker. Guarantor Tom Halstead. I carried the debt. They owned the house. I had no claim, not even a foot on the front step. My stomach dropped clean through the floor. Megan, I said quietly, I signed what I was told was co-ownership. She looked pained. Tom, this is what's on file. I thanked her and walked out into the cold sunlight. It felt like the entire city of Cedar Rapids was tilting sideways. Even the wind felt different, like it knew something I didn't. I drove back to the mansion, hands tight on the wheel. Cars still lined the street from the party. People were taking pictures by the front porch columns. I walked up the driveway, heart pounding, and knocked. Evelyn opened the door just wide enough to slip her face out. Tom, what are you doing here? She asked, all tight and proper. I want to see the paperwork, I said. The ownership papers. I want to know why I'm not on them. You're making a scene, she hissed. This is embarrassing. I'm just asking a question. You have no right to ask anything, she snapped. This isn't your house. That last sentence hit me harder than any mortar blast I ever ducked. Behind her, people were watching, a couple of neighbors. One of Melissa's co-workers, the pastor's wife. All of them staring. Go home, Tom, Evelyn said, her voice low and icy. Before you embarrass Melissa. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because the truth was, I didn't know what home was anymore. I walked back to my truck in silence, feeling every pair of eyes on my back. And then came the kicker. When I got home, I tried calling Melissa. No answer. Then voicemail. Then the text, I'm really disappointed you're being this dramatic. That word again. I finally called a lawyer, a guy a co-worker once recommended. He listened, sighed, and said, these cases are messy. If you sign something without reading carefully, it's uphill. I hung up feeling like I'd just been told to fight a fire with a garden hose. That night, after a long shower and one beer I didn't even finish, I sat at the edge of my bed and made a decision. I'd been dismissed, humiliated, and boxed out, but I wasn't done, not by a long shot. I woke up the next morning with a pit in my stomach and a sense that something in my life had quietly snapped overnight. Not broken, snapped clean, like a dry branch that finally gives under years of pressure. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared out the window while the sun pushed through a gray Iowa sky. Our backyard looked the same as always. Patchy grass, an old grill. Robbie's long-faded baseball lying near the fence. But somehow it all felt unfamiliar, like someone had moved the walls while I slept. I opened my bank app. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. And that's when I noticed it. A transfer I didn't recognize. Then another and another. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $350 there, but then I scrolled further back. $4,000, $3,200, $7,000. Across the last year, more than $42,000 had quietly flowed from our joint account into an account labeled simply E. Parker. Evelyn. My jaw locked so hard it hurt. I went into the spare room where we kept boxes of old paperwork and pulled everything down: bank statements, insurance forms, credit union letters. Melissa always said she'd take care of the bills. I trusted her. Now looking at the dates lined up with excuses she'd given me. Mom needed help. It's temporary. Don't worry about it. I felt sick. Not angry yet, just sick. Then I remembered something else. Our Nest doorbell camera saves audio clips whenever someone walks up to the porch. Melissa never liked that thing. She said it made us look paranoid, but she didn't know it kept a full archive unless you manually deleted it. I opened the app, scrolled, listened. Most clips were boring Amazon deliveries, kids selling fundraiser candy, stray cats. Then I found it. 2 nights before the party, 11:42 p.m. Melissa whispering, "Here, Mom, put it in your purse." Evelyn whispering back, "He won't see these." No, Melissa answered. He never checks anything. And once the house is in your name, I'm done playing wife. He'll keep paying anyway. My breath left my body. Not fast, slow, like someone punched a hole in my lungs. I replayed it twice, 3 times. The tone, the certainty. The way she said done playing wife like our life together was some long, exhausting charade she was finally excused from. I sat there in the empty house with the walls closing in, and then something happened. The sickness disappeared, and a calm I hadn't felt in months settled over me like fresh snow. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to send long texts Melissa would ignore. I was going to fight smart. I grabbed my keys and drove downtown to the office of attorney Carla Jensen, a lawyer a guy at the VFW had once sworn doesn't get pushed around by anyone. Her building sat across from the old courthouse, a red brick place that looked like it could withstand a tornado. Carla was in her early 60s, sharp eyes, silver bun glasses on a chain. When she shook my hand, it was firm, union firm. "What's going on, Tom?" she asked, shutting the door to her office. I told her everything. The text, the mortgage, the transfers, the recording, every detail spilled out of me like water from a cracked pipe. When I finished, she sat back, tapping her pen on a legal pad. "This won't be smooth," she said. "Iowa family court is slow. You need to be ready for 6 to 9 months of paperwork, hearings, delays, but..." She leaned forward. "From what you've shown me, we can protect you starting today." That word protect hit me harder than I expected. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "You need to gather everything. Every statement, every transfer, every text, every recording. I'll subpoena the rest. But you must stay quiet. Don't warn your wife or her mother. Don't confront them. We'll control the narrative legally." She looked at me over her glasses. "And Tom, you need to prepare yourself. Women like Evelyn don't back down. They will fight." I nodded. "So will I." On the way home, I stopped at Casey's, grabbed a coffee, even though my hands were still shaking, and sat in the parking lot staring at my phone. 1 hour before, I'd felt like a man being pushed out of his own life. Now I felt something different. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a man standing up. I spent the next several days moving like a man with a quiet mission. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just slow, steady work, the kind of work a union man understands. You don't rush a weld. You don't force a pipe. You move deliberate, you measure twice, and you make damn sure the finished product holds. First thing I did was print every bank statement from the past 2 years. I highlighted each transfer Melissa made to her mother dates, amounts, notes like family help or temporary loan. I created a folder called Financial Misuse and slid them all inside. Next came the texts. Every cold message, every guilt trip, every "Tom, you're being dramatic." Screenshots, timestamps saved to a USB Carla gave me. Then the audio clip. I played it once more, listening to Melissa's whisper. "Once the house is in your name, I'm done playing wife." Even after all, I'd found those words cut deep. Not the betrayal itself, I'd already made peace with that part. What hurt was the casual way she said it, like she'd rehearsed the line in her head for months. I filed it under evidence, prior intent. I gathered the mortgage papers next. They were buried in a drawer under old manuals and birthday cards. When I laid them out on the kitchen table, the truth glared back at me like a warning label: Guarantor Tom Halstead, non-owner. My name nowhere else. A year earlier, when Melissa handed me the papers, she'd said, "Honey, these just confirm your income. It'll help Mom get better rates. It's standard stuff." And I'd believed her, because that's what marriage is supposed to be. While I was sorting everything, Melissa's behavior changed. It wasn't subtle. She swung between unusually sweet and strangely cold, like she sensed something was shifting under her feet but couldn't tell where or why. One night she approached me in the kitchen while I was rinsing off a plate. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Busy with work," I answered. She stepped closer. "Are we okay?" Instead of telling her what I knew, what I'd heard, what I'd uncovered, I just replied, "We're fine." But my tone must have sounded different because she froze. And for the first time in a long time, she looked uncertain. On Wednesday afternoon, Carla called. "Evelyn hired a lawyer," she said. "He's already trying to block access to some financial documents." I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel. Is that going to stop us? "No," she said. "I filed a counter motion 10 minutes ago. I'm also requesting an emergency hearing. Be ready." When Niwanawarna, Monday morning, Lynn County Courthouse, 9 a.m. My stomach sank. Not from fear, just the weight of everything becoming real. That night, 4 days after I started collecting evidence, I stayed up late at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional whisper of tires on the road outside. I laid everything out, every folder, every printed statement, every text, every email, every audio clip. I organized them by category the way Carla taught me. Legal storms aren't won with anger. They're won with paper. At 1:15 a.m., I closed the last folder and placed it neatly on top of the stack. I sat there for a moment staring into the dark kitchen, letting the truth settle in. The text Melissa sent me at the mansion had been the spark, sure. But what came after the recordings, the transfers, the lies that had turned the spark into a fire? A quiet fire, slow and deliberate. I whispered into the empty room, not with anger, but with clarity. 1 hour after you told me not to come, you started losing everything. And for the first time in months, maybe longer, I slept soundly. Monday morning came colder than most early spring mornings in Iowa. The kind of cold that gets into your sleeves and makes your bones feel older than they are. I shaved, put on my best button-down, the blue one Melissa always said made me look decent in public, and drove to the Lynn County Courthouse with the manila folder sitting on the passenger seat like a silent witness. Downtown Cedar Rapids looked tired. Gray buildings, a few early joggers, the smell of coffee drifting from the cafe across from the courthouse steps. I parked, sat there for a second, and breathed in slow. I'd been through hearings before, union grievances, VA paperwork disputes, but nothing like this. Inside, people milled around the waiting area, young couples fighting over custody, older folks whispering to their lawyers, a woman holding a stack of documents to her chest like it was armor. Ordinary Midwest life, quiet, heavy, messy. Carla waved me over. "You ready?" "As ready as I can be." "You're going to do fine," she said. "Just tell the truth and let the evidence speak." We were barely seated when the door opened, and in walked Melissa and Evelyn with a tall man in a sharp gray suit behind them. Their lawyer. He had that polished look of someone who billed by the hour even when he blinked. Melissa glanced at me briefly. Evelyn didn't look at me at all. When our case number was called, we stepped into a small hearing room with beige walls, a humming light, and a judge who looked like he had already been awake far too long. "Case 24317, the clerk announced. The judge looked over his glasses. "Let's proceed." Carla stood. "Your Honor, we are requesting emergency financial protections for my client, Mr. Halstead, due to ongoing financial misuse and misrepresentation by his wife, Mrs. Parker, and her mother, Ms. Parker." Evelyn's lawyer rose like someone had yanked a string. "Your Honor, these allegations are exaggerated. Mrs. Parker has acted solely to support her mother's health needs. Mr. Halstead is attempting to punish his wife for family obligations." The judge lifted a hand. "We'll review the evidence." And then it began. Carla brought out bank statements, spreading them one by one across the table like a slow-building storm. $42,611, she said, transferred without the client's knowledge. The judge studied them, brows lowering. Next came the mortgage documents. "Your Honor," Carla said, "my client signed believing he was co-owner. He was misled. As filed, he is solely liable for the debt with no ownership claim." Even the judge paused at that. Then she played the Nest doorbell recording. The room went still. Melissa's voice. "Once the house is in your name, I'm done playing wife. He'll keep paying anyway." Evelyn's voice. "He won't check anything." The judge slowly removed his glasses. I didn't look at Melissa. I didn't trust myself to. Her lawyer scrambled. "Your Honor, that recording, who knows when?" Carla cut him off calmly. "Time-stamped, authenticated, and captured on the defendant's own property." The murmurs from the hallway drifted in like wind under a door. Melissa's face crumpled, not angry, scared. Evelyn leaned toward her lawyer and whispered furiously, jabbing a stiff finger in the air. The man looked trapped between her and the evidence. "All right," the judge finally said, voice steady. "Here's my ruling." I held my breath. Effective immediately, all joint accounts are frozen. No party may transfer or withdraw funds without court approval. The mortgage responsibility will be reviewed, and the court will determine whether Mr. Halstead remains liable. A full investigation into financial misconduct will begin. He tapped his pen twice. "And let me be clear, this process may take 6 to 9 months to fully resolve. But Mr. Halstead will not suffer additional financial harm during that period." 6 to 9 months. Longer than I hoped, but fair, realistic, and more protection than I expected today. The judge nodded toward Carla. Your client is protected as of this moment. Evelyn shot to her feet. This is absurdity. The judge didn't even look up. Ma'am, one more outburst and I'll have you removed. She froze, lips trembling with fury. Melissa turned to me, voice a whisper only I could hear. Tom, please, we can fix this. I stood gathering my papers with calm hands. I already have. Carla placed a gentle hand on my shoulder as we walked out. You did good, really good. In the hallway, people I didn't know nodded at me. Not nosy, not pitying. Just small, quiet nods. The kind men give each other when they recognize someone standing back up after being knocked flat. Out on the courthouse steps, the cold didn't feel so sharp anymore. The 9 months that followed were slow, steady, and strangely peaceful. Not easy, just peaceful in that quiet way life becomes when you finally stop fighting the wrong battle. I moved into a small rental near Ellis Park, a simple one-bedroom with old wood floors and a view of the river if you lean just right toward the window. The landlord was a retired machinist who gave me a discount because he liked union men, and that was enough for me. I bought a used recliner off Facebook Marketplace and set it in front of the window. Most nights I'd sit there with a cup of tea watching the lights from the bridge shimmer on the water. Melissa tried calling at first, then texting, then emailing. I didn't block her immediately, I just didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't hate her. Hate takes energy. What I felt was something else, something quieter. A closing of a chapter I hadn't even realized was ending. After a while, her messages stopped altogether. The legal process dragged on exactly like Carla said it would. Hearings, motions, paperwork. But every time I showed up, I felt a little steadier, a little more myself. Carla fought like a bulldog, and Evelyn's polished lawyer eventually looked more tired than smug. Halfway through the process, a financial auditor from the court reviewed all transfers and documents. His report was blunt. Tom Halstead was misled, financially exploited, and excluded from property he was guaranteed to fund. Evelyn tried to argue, tried to justify, tried to spin everything as a misunderstanding. But paper doesn't lie. 3 months later, the judge ruled that the mansion had to be put up for sale unless Evelyn refinanced it completely without my name. She couldn't. Not with her income, not with her credit, not without me. That house, the one I wasn't allowed to step inside, went on the market at the end of summer. Neighbors whispered. Church ladies whispered louder. By fall, Melissa agreed to mediation. She looked different, tired, worn. Not cruel, not angry. Just someone facing the consequences of choices she never thought would catch up. She signed the papers acknowledging what the court already confirmed. The withdrawals were improper. The mortgage was built on misrepresentation, and she owed restitution for the amounts taken from our joint account. When it was all said and done, the weight I'd been carrying for years finally loosened from my shoulders. One crisp October morning, I stood outside the courthouse for the last time. The trees along the block had turned bright gold, the kind of color you only see a few days each year before the wind strips everything bare. Carla shook my hand. You made it, she said. Not everyone does. I had help, I told her. She smiled. Take your life back now, Tom. That's exactly what I did. I rebuilt slowly, breakfasts at small diners, long walks by the river. Sunday mornings at the VFW, listening to old-timers tell the same stories with the same pride. I fixed up an old charcoal grill behind my rental and cooked burgers for neighbors. I even helped a teenage kid next door patch a hole in his muffler and watched the look of pure achievement on his face when the car stopped rattling. Reminded me of Robbie years ago. Life didn't go back to what it used to be, but it went forward, and that was enough. Sometimes people ask me if I miss Melissa. What I miss is the idea of who I thought she was, who I thought we were building something with. But the truth is simple. Some endings are blessings wearing the disguise of heartbreak, and some betrayals are just the universe clearing your path. To anyone listening to this, especially if you've been pushed aside by the people who promised to stand with you, you're not alone. You're not crazy, and you're not finished. Keep walking, keep standing, and don't let anyone convince you that your value depends on how much you sacrifice for people who don't see you. If you found something in my story, strength, clarity, a reason to keep going, stick around. Share your own story, or just hit follow so we can walk through the next one together.